The Hook in the Jaw, a dramatic story inspired by Ezekiel 38 to 412. The wind over the northern plains carried the smell of iron and dust. General Mikhail Sokolov stood beside a column of armored vehicles stretching across the valley like a steel serpent. Engines idled. Helicopters beat the sky overhead. In the distance, the horizon burned orange with the first hint of sunrise. He should have felt triumph. Instead, there was a strange heaviness in the air. The orders had come weeks ago, sealed directives passed down through layers of command. They spoke of opportunity, of weakness, of a land rich and prosperous but unprepared, a land called Israel. Coming for plunder, the briefing had said. Sokolov had seen war before. Afghanistan, Syria, the cold mountains of Chechnya. War was never glorious, but it was predictable. Armies moved, men fought, and nations gained or lost ground. But this felt different. Something unseen seemed to pull the armies southward like a current beneath dark water. The prophecy, thousands of miles away, in a quiet study lined with books, an old scholar named Daniel Levi leaned over an open Bible. His hands trembled. The television in the background showed images from the north, massive troop movements, armored divisions gathering like storm clouds. Daniel whispered aloud as his eyes traced the ancient words. "I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with all your army." He paused. Those words had been written nearly 2,600 years earlier by the prophet Ezekiel. At the time, Israel had been a broken nation in exile. Yet Ezekiel had spoken of a distant future, of a coalition from the far north led by a mysterious ruler named Gog. Nations would gather, armies would come, not by coincidence, but because God himself would draw them. Daniel closed his eyes. "Lord, is this it?" Outside his window, Jerusalem stirred to life as the sun rose over the ancient city. Drawn south, General Sokolov climbed into the lead vehicle. "Convoy moving," came the voice over the radio. Engines roared. Columns of armored trucks, missile carriers, and infantry transports rolled forward across the barren terrain. Behind them flew the flags of allied nations' forces from distant lands joining the march. Strategists had calculated everything. Supply lines, air superiority, timing. Everything pointed to victory. But Sokolov could not shake the feeling that they were not leading this invasion. They were being led, pulled, dragged forward by something invisible. He remembered a strange phrase one of his intelligence officers had mentioned during a briefing. Something about an ancient Jewish prophecy. Sokolov had laughed it off then. Now he wasn't laughing. The city of peace. In Jerusalem, soldiers hurried to reinforce defensive positions along the outskirts of the city. Sirens occasionally wailed across the hills. The world watched. Satellite feeds showed the advancing coalition, tens of thousands of troops moving south like a gathering storm. Inside, a small prayer room near the western wall, Daniel Levi knelt with several others. They prayed not with panic, but with solemn certainty, because the prophecy did not end with invasion. It ended with judgment. Daniel spoke quietly. "The armies think they are coming for wealth, for land, for victory." He opened the Bible again and read aloud. "You will say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages, to seize plunder and carry off spoil." He looked at the others. "But God says he is bringing them." A young soldier listening nearby frowned. "Why would God do that?" Daniel's answer came softly. "So the world will know who he is." The sky turns dark. By the third day, the coalition forces had crossed into contested territory. Drones filled the sky. Jets streaked overhead. Satellite guidance systems tracked every movement. General Sokolov stood atop a ridge overlooking the distant hills of Israel. Smoke rose from scattered clashes ahead. The invasion had begun. Yet something strange happened as the army advanced. Compasses flickered. Communication systems crackled with interference. Some units reported strange atmospheric disturbances. The sky itself seemed heavy. Then came the storm. The earth shakes. It began with a deep rumble beneath the ground. At first, Sokolov thought it was artillery, but the vibration grew stronger. The earth moved. Armored vehicles rocked violently. Men shouted. A massive earthquake ripped across the valley. Cliffs collapsed. Roads split apart. Entire formations of vehicles slid into sudden chasms. Helicopters struggled to stay airborne as violent winds tore across the landscape. Over the radio came desperate voices. Ground collapse. Command vehicles lost. Navigation failure. Chaos erupted across the entire invading force. Sokolov fell to one knee as the earth convulsed beneath him. For the first time in his life, the hardened general felt fear. Fire from the sky. Then came the fire. Lightning split the dark clouds above, but it was no ordinary storm. Bolts of blinding light struck the advancing columns. Fuel depots exploded. Missile trucks erupted into flames. Air defenses malfunctioned as confusion spread through the ranks. Friend turned against friend in the panic. Units fired wildly, unable to identify targets. It was as though the entire army had fallen into madness. Sokolov staggered toward a ridge overlooking the battlefield. What he saw there would haunt him forever. The invading army, the unstoppable coalition, was collapsing under forces they could not control. Earth, storm, fire, confusion, everything Ezekiel had written centuries ago. The Watchers in Jerusalem. From the hills outside Jerusalem, Israeli soldiers watched the northern horizon. Radar systems showed massive disruptions in the enemy forces. Entire divisions had halted. Others were scattering. Command centers struggled to understand what was happening. Daniel Levi stood quietly beside one of the officers. He looked toward the dark clouds. Then he spoke the final line of the prophecy. "And I will magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations." The officer looked at him. "You think this is divine?" Daniel answered without hesitation. "I think the world is about to learn something it forgot." The hook revealed. Back on the battlefield, General Sokolov sat amid the wreckage of his convoy. The storm was fading now. The earth had grown still. What remained of the once mighty invasion force lay scattered across the valley. Broken vehicles, burning equipment, abandoned weapons. He stared south toward the distant hills of Israel. Then he whispered something he never imagined he would say. "We were brought here, not by strategy, not by politics, but by something far greater, something ancient, something foretold." A hook in the jaw. And suddenly Sokolov understood. They had never been the hunters. They had been the summoned. Epilogue. Across the world, news networks struggled to explain the inexplicable collapse of the invasion. Military analysts debated. Politicians blamed one another. But in Jerusalem, Daniel Levi closed his Bible and looked toward the morning sun rising over the ancient city. He spoke quietly. The nations came for plunder. He turned the final page. But they came because God called them, and the world would never forget what happened next.